The chandeliers sparkled like frozen tears above Lara's head as she stepped through the glass doors of the Solstice Grand Hotel. The lobby, draped in velvet and echoing with the click of Louboutin heels, felt like another planet, one where everyone spoke the language of couture and casual cruelty. Lara tugged at the hem of her borrowed blazer. It was a size too big, and the shoulder pads made her look like she was auditioning for a 1980s soap opera. Around her, towering models draped in archival Galliano whispered behind manicured hands. Even the interns looked like they'd just stepped off a Milan runway. She didn't belong here, and everyone could tell. A deep voice interrupted her growing panic. "Name." The receptionist didn't look up from her tablet. She had a sleek bob and an expression that said, "I'm only being paid to tolerate you." "Lara Maida," she said, offering a nervous smile. "I'm, interning with Coven." The woman blinked, scanned the list, then sighed theatrically. "You're not on the guest list." Lara felt the heat crawl up her neck. "There must be a mistake. I got the confirmation email this morning." She fumbled in her phone, pulling up the message from the assistant. Before the receptionist could respond, a voice rang out from behind them, cool, sharp, and unmistakably amused. Well, the simple girl made it." Lara turned. Enter Celeste Vora, Coven's lead designer and unofficial queen of the city's fashion scene. She was wearing custom feathers, and her eyes glittered with something darker than mascara. "I thought you'd be cleaning racks in the backroom, not contaminating the lobby." Celeste's laughter was picked up by her entourage, a gaggle of influencers and stylists, all perfectly filtered in real life. "I have an invitation," Lara said, steadier now, holding up her phone. Celeste leaned in with faux sympathy. "Darling, in this industry, a forwarded email is worth less than a knockoff clutch, but do go on, let's pretend." Laughter, flashbulbs. One influencer took a sneaky photo and posted it mid-snicker. Lara caught a glimpse of the caption. "OOTD or OMFG?" Suddenly, her cheap shoes felt glued to the marble. A security guard approached, earpiece blinking. "Ma'am, if you're not on the official guest list, I'll have to ask you to wait outside." Lara opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Behind the guard on the mezzanine balcony, a woman stood watching, powerful, poised, dressed in all-white power couture like a storm waiting to break. Lara met her eyes she'd seen in the mirror her whole life. Her older sister. Ava Maida, CEO of Maida Group, billionaire, fashion's most feared executive. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. Lara swallowed the sting and turned back to security. "It's fine," she said softly, "I'll leave." As she walked back toward the exit, the lobby resumed its glittering buzz. Conversations resumed, cameras clicked, and Celeste clinked her champagne glass in victory. No one noticed the slight nod Ava gave to her assistant. No one heard the whispered instruction. "Start pulling records on Coven, quietly." Lara sat on the concrete steps behind the Solstice Grand, her phone buzzing with 100 unread notifications. The hashtag had taken off, memes, tweets, a TikTok with Celeste's smirk and a glitter filter. But none of it compared to the ache rising in her chest, the familiar weight of not being enough. Not for them. Not even for her sister. A year ago, things were different. She wasn't just the simple girl then. She was the next big thing. Sparkles then Mumbai 11 months earlier. Lara's fingers moved fast across the cutting table, tracing fabric with precision while EDM pulsed through the shared studio. The space was chaotic, half thrift store, half genius lab, and it had been hers. She co-founded Studio Numa with her mentor, Rehan Malhotra. He was a former Paris Fashion Week darling turned underground icon. Rehan had plucked Lara out of design school with a promise: "We're going to shake the pillars of this industry together." For a while they did. Their first capsule collection made it into Vogue India. Influencers wore their asymmetrical kaftans and spoke about ethical opulence. Buyers from Dubai and Singapore had started calling. But as the spotlight grew warmer, Rehan began to change. He started small. Her name removed from an interview. Credit for design quietly reassigned. A signature changed on a sketch Lara had slaved over for days. She brushed it off. "He's under pressure," she told herself. "It's just temporary." Then came the pitch meeting with Coven, the mega brand looking to buy into up-and-coming labels. They flew to Delhi for it, business class, hotel suite, everything first class. Rahan told her to wait in the lounge while he presented. Just logistics, he'd said. 2 voices will confuse them, trust me. 2 days later, Studio Numa was bought without her. Her name was nowhere in the press release. No contract, no share, not even a goodbye. She tried to confront him, he laughed. You're talented, Lara, but you're not marketable. They wanted a name with pedigree, and you don't even have a last name that sells. She left with nothing but a single backup copy of her sketches and a broken partnership. Worse still was the betrayal of Tia, her best friend since their design school days. They were inseparable once, the duo who shared noodles, internships, and heartbreaks. Tia had always been a little jealous, but Lara thought it was harmless. Until she found out who Rahan was dating. Worse, Tia had known about the buyout. She was even named in the restructuring plan as a junior creative director. Sorry, Lara, she'd said with crocodile tears, but this is fashion. You have to play the game or get left behind. Lara didn't reply. She just walked out of her old life. Now in the alley behind Solstice Grand, with Celeste's laughter echoing in her head, Lara stared at her cracked phone screen. She scrolled past the memes until she hit the folder she never opened. Her old sketches, designs that had never seen the light of day. Some of them had already been stolen. Modified, mass-produced. Sold under Coven's name. She had proof. She just hadn't had the strength yet. A buzzing call interrupted her spiral. Unknown number, she almost declined. But then a voice spoke. You need to stand up now. It was Ava, her sister, cold, distant, but unmistakable. You didn't see anything, Lara said, choking down embarrassment. I saw everything, Ava replied, and I've seen enough. There was a pause, then a clipped statement. You have 48 hours to send me everything you have, every file, every sketch, every NDA they made you sign. Lara froze. What are you talking about? Ava's voice softened just a little. This isn't the first time a man took your work, but it's going to be the last. The ballroom of the Meridian Fashion Dome throbbed with strobe lights and ego. It was the industry's biggest night, the Avant Gala, where deals were whispered, careers were made, and outfits were judged with the brutality of a firing squad. Lara stood near the back, half hidden behind a champagne tower, wearing a muted blue dress that looked invisible beside the sequined chaos around her. The invitation had come anonymously, one of those silent olive branches only the powerful could extend. Probably Ava. Everywhere Lara looked, someone gleamed. Influencers filmed content in slow motion while assistants followed with ring lights. The fashion press swirled through the room like predators in silk, and at the center of it all, commanding a literal spotlight, stood Celeste Vora, radiant in a crimson dress made from hand-dyed organza and pure venom. Is that her? Someone stage whispered nearby. A group of microcelebs turned toward Lara, their phones raised like weapons. It didn't take long. Celeste caught sight of her and smiled like a shark who just smelled blood. Oh, look who clawed her way back from the clearance rack, she purred, grabbing a mic from a nearby event host. Everyone, a round of applause for tonight's surprise guest, the woman who thought RSVP meant ruined social value permanently. The laughter was instant, vicious. Screens around the room flashed with the now viral meme from the Solstice Grand lobby, a still of Lara's confused face beside a mocking caption. Couture, I thought it was a dish. The crowd held. A security guard appeared again, déjà vu in human form. Ma'am, we've had a complaint. Lara's voice broke. I was invited. Sure, Celeste cut in. By who? Salvation Army. The crowd loved it. One influencer started live streaming, gleefully narrating, "This is what happens when you try to crash fashion royalty, babes." Then someone from PR piped up. Let's make this fun. What's she wearing? Let's vote authentic or tragic. The audience erupted into a twisted game show. Lara stood frozen, every nerve screamed to run, but then her eyes caught a familiar shape near the stage wings. Ave. Still in white, still watching. This time with her head tilted, measuring. Lara clenched her jaw and turned to the nearest camera. You want a show, she said, loud enough for the mic to catch. The crowd paused, laughter dimmed into curiosity. Even Celeste tilted her head, sensing a shift. Lara pulled a folded paper from her bag. This is the original sketch for the dress Celeste is wearing right now. She held it up beside the stage screen. Gasps, the lines were unmistakable, identical, too exact to be coincidence. Whispers started. A journalist in the back fumbled for her recorder. Celeste's face paled. That's ridiculous. You could have copied it after you saw. I drew this 2 years ago. I have time-stamped files, cloud backups, and email drafts. Lara's voice didn't shake anymore. Coven stole my work, and I'm not the only one. A tech assistant with a lanyard stepped forward from the side curtain, handed something to Ava, and whispered. Ava nodded, then strode up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, her voice carrying power like a tailored blazer. Effective immediately, Coven Group's creative licensing contracts are under investigation. And Celeste Vora's contract with Meta Holdings, she turned to the designer. Terminated. The silence was deafening. A single heel click echoed as Celeste took a shaky step backward, her spotlight flickering. Lara didn't move. Didn't blink. This time she owned the room. The Obsidian Fashion Gala was the apex of the season, an invite-only spectacle where reputations were made and careers destroyed under flashing lights. Held inside the glass dome atrium of the newly opened Veron Tower, every inch of the venue screamed exclusivity. And somehow Lara had made it inside. Her dress, a minimalist black column gown she stitched together herself the night before, wasn't couture, but it fit her like a quiet threat. Ava had pulled the strings to get her name onto the list, the right name. Lara Meta. Suddenly it carried weight. But even weight can be dragged through the mud. As she walked the black carpet, influencers and photographers gave her the once-over. Some recognized her from that viral video, the lobby, the laughter, the meme. Whispers followed. She's that girl. Celeste humiliated her, remember. Is she crashing again? Inside, the ceiling shimmered with projection-mapped constellations. Champagne towers sparkled. Floating platforms hosted models on display like gods in Olympus. And there, centered like a crown jewel, stood Celeste, cloaked in a custom serpentine gown that coiled around her body like armor. She saw Lara instantly and smiled. Audacity has a smell, doesn't it? Celeste purred to her entourage. Lara took a shaky breath and approached the crowd forming around a newly unveiled collection. She recognized the designs immediately. The cut of the jacket, the structured asymmetry. Hers. Celeste had stolen them, dressed them in new colors, and called them the future of fashion. Lara turned to one of the nearby fashion bloggers. Those designs aren't hers. The blogger blinked. Sorry, who are you again? Laughter. From the side, a voice chirped with faux enthusiasm. Oh my god, you guys, is this a performance piece? Tia. In a gleaming jumpsuit and heels that cost more than Lara's monthly rent, Tia strode forward, filming on her phone. Say hi to the internet, Lara, back for round 2, she cooed, spinning her camera. More phones turned, more giggles. Then came security. A tall man in a black suit tapped Lara's shoulder. Ma'am, there's a concern about your invitation being fabricated. It's not, Lara said, pulling out her credentials. I was invited by Ava Meta. The guard gave her a blank look. Sure you were. The crowd circled tighter. I think she's crashing again, someone sneered. Maybe she's writing a dissertation on rejection. Celeste stepped forward, eyes wide with mock concern. Lara, sweetie, this is an elite event, not community college. The laughter exploded. A nearby influencer mimed throwing a coin at her. Here's a tip, literally. Then it happened. A digital wall behind the crowd lit up. Celeste's newest collection played in a montage, shots of her designs in motion. But in the corner, unnoticed by most, a tiny watermark flickered. LM2023. Lara's initials, her timestamp, her proof left embedded in the raw design files before they were ever stolen. She'd forgotten she even added it. Ava hadn't. Lara straightened. Everyone looked closer at the footage. No one did. They were too busy jeering, filming, tagging, laughing. The audio cut out, a glitch, then static. Then black. And finally, a chilling voice over the speakers. This collection was plagiarized. Gasps, confusion. The screen rebooted, this time with a different set of files loading. A watermark enhanced screenshots, original sketches, metadata timestamps. Celeste's face drained of color. Lara didn't say another word. She just stood there quiet and still as everyone around her realized. The joke wasn't on her anymore. The ballroom, moments ago a theater of mockery, had turned into a war room. Celeste had disappeared, likely escorted out by security under Ava's quiet directive. The press buzzed like flies around a carcass, whispering into recorders, scribbling in notebooks, texting their editors with words like plagiarism, exposé, and collapse. Lara stood under the stage lights, still holding the sketch. For the first time in a year, her hands didn't shake. Ava stood beside her now, not as a distant sister or cold mogul, but as an ally. She leaned in and said without emotion, "You need to do it now, don't blink." Lara nodded. A hush fell as Ava gestured to the AV team. A large screen behind them flickered to life. Lara stepped forward, cleared her throat, and spoke into the microphone. "Everyone here knows Celeste Vora, but you don't know the woman she erased." She clicked the remote in her hand. A series of images appeared, scanned sketches, digital timestamps, side-by-side comparisons of designs now paraded on red carpets and sold in luxury boutiques, all unmistakably originating from Lara's original files. "These were taken from my personal archives," she continued. "Many of these pieces were created during my time at Studio Numa before the buyout, before my name was wiped." The crowd murmured, the journalists scribbled faster. "And it wasn't just Celeste," Lara added, clicking again. A screenshot appeared, an internal email from Rehan Malhotra, her former mentor, dated 6 months before the Coven buyout. It read, "Tell the girl we lost the client, I'll handle the paperwork. Coven's only interested in a clean acquisition. Keep her out of it. She doesn't have the media face." Gasps rippled across the room. Another click, this time a selfie taken months later, showing Rehan and Tia, her ex-best friend, drinking champagne under a framed Coven logo. The caption read, "To our new life, clinking glasses, no baggage, no dead weight." The air turned cold. Every design, Lara said, her voice clear now, was presented as their own, not just by Rehan, but with the help of insiders at Coven and the influencers who wore those stolen ideas and pretended to stand for sustainable, female-led fashion. She paused, then added, "Some of you are in this room." That landed like a grenade. Several influencers looked visibly uncomfortable. One silently lowered her phone. The tech assistant beside the screen turned to Ava and whispered something. Ava stepped forward again. "For those asking if this is real," she said sharply, "my legal team has already verified Lara's files, every timestamp, every document, and Meta Holdings will now be launching a full internal audit into our subsidiaries, including Coven and Studio Numa." Then she looked directly at a table near the back. "Mr. Malhotra, I assume your lawyer is present." The spotlight found him. Rehan Malhotra, who had just arrived thinking he'd be the main event, sat frozen, his jaw tight. "Nice to see you again," Ava added dryly. "You'll be hearing from us extensively." Lara stepped forward once more. "I was silenced, humiliated, laughed at, not just tonight but for the past year, but I kept receipts, and you should all start doing the same." She stepped back. Applause began, tentative at first, then growing. Even some of the influencers clapped. A few people stood, cameras now focused on her, not in ridicule but awe. In the corner, a PR director whispered into her phone, "We need to pivot. Get Lara's team on the call sheet now." The shift had begun. Backstage, as the crowd dispersed and the press circled for statements, Lara leaned against the wall and finally exhaled. Her heart was racing, but her spirit was steady. Ava walked over, sipping a glass of water. "You did well," she said. Lara eyed her carefully. "Why now? Why help me?" Ava's expression was unreadable, because injustice leaves a trail, and I don't like cleaning up other people's messes, especially when they underestimate my bloodline. Lara blinked. "You're saying this was personal?" Ava shrugged. "You're my sister, and no one erases my sister and gets away with it, even if you hate me." Lara didn't respond. She didn't know how to, not yet. Ava handed her a slim folder. Inside were signed witness statements, emails, and a timeline compiled by a corporate investigator. "You'll need this for tomorrow," Ava said. "We're taking it to the Fashion Federation." Why, Lara asked, why not just fire them and be done? Ava smiled for the first time, a dangerous, satisfied smile. Because we're not done yet, now we show the world what real justice looks like. The next morning, the hall of the Indian Fashion Federation, IFF, buzzed with unease. It was supposed to be a closed-door hearing, just the board, a few legal reps, and some PR professionals in very neutral suits, but word had leaked. Journalists crowded the entrance. Protesters held signs reading "Credit the creators" and "Fashion is not theft." Even the IFF's official social media account posted a cryptic story. Unprecedented review underway, statement coming. Inside, Lara sat across a polished wooden table, flanked by Ava on one side and a sharply dressed corporate attorney on the other. She wasn't dressed in muted tones today. She wore one of her own designs, a deep emerald-structured jacket with flared cuffs and a gold-threaded bodice, the kind of piece that refused to be ignored. Across from her sat Rehan, arms crossed, flanked by Coven's legal team. Tia was notably absent. Celeste, radio silent since her public termination. The Federation chair cleared her throat. Ms. Maida, you've claimed your designs were appropriated without consent and passed off under the Coven Group's umbrella. Do you have proof? Lara didn't blink. She nodded toward the screen behind her. Play it. A slideshow began. Sketches appeared, timestamped through design software. Emails from Lara to Rehan with attached drafts matching finished garments worn by influencers 6 months later. Internal Slack messages from a former Coven assistant, now a whistleblower, describing how original credits were scrubbed at the last minute. Rehan said she didn't have the look they wanted for marketing, told us to replace her with someone media-friendly. Gasps echoed in the chamber. Next came a series of side-by-side comparisons. On one side, Lara's original vision boards with hand-noted color palettes and fabric types. On the other, runway images of nearly identical outfits debuted at Milan and Dubai shows, credited entirely to Rehan and his new creative team. A hushed voice from the board asked, "How did these files get out of your possession?" Ava answered before Lara could. "We traced unauthorized data transfers from Ms. Maida's cloud storage. The account was accessed from IPs linked to Coven's Mumbai headquarters." One of the board members paled. "That's illegal." A soft knock interrupted the moment. A paralegal entered with a document and handed it to the chair. The chair scanned it, eyebrows lifting. "This just in, Rehan Malhotra has been served with a cease and desist by Maida Holdings' Internal Ethics Committee and a pending lawsuit for intellectual property theft." Lara sat back, calm, collected. She had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times, but now that it was happening, it felt quiet. "Peaceful," the board murmured among themselves, then the chairwoman addressed the room. "Effective immediately, the Federation will suspend Rehan Malhotra's membership and recommend disqualification from all upcoming international circuits. A formal apology and financial restitution to Ms. Maida are now under review." Rehan stood abruptly. "You're destroying my career based on some sketches and a bitter ex-designer." Ava rose smoothly. "No, Mr. Malhotra, you destroyed your career the moment you decided talent could be stolen." Rehan stormed out, leaving behind silence and defeat. Outside, the press mobbed Lara the moment she stepped out. Cameras flashed, questions flew. "Lara, how much did they steal? Is it true Tia's hiding in Dubai? Will you be starting your own label now?" Lara didn't stop for long, but she did turn to the main mic. "I was humiliated for being the wrong kind of woman in this industry, too quiet, too brown, too unpolished. I let that shame hold me hostage, but no more." She glanced at Ava beside her. "To every young designer watching this, protect your work, because you don't need to be loud to be powerful, you just need to be heard at the right time." A roar of applause followed her down the steps. That evening, #Justice for Lara trended in 6 countries. Major fashion pages posted apology statements. Coven stock plummeted. But in a quiet corner of Lara's apartment, away from the flashing cameras and validation, she stared at her sewing machine. She ran a finger over its chipped edge and whispered, "We're just getting started." Celeste Vora woke in her penthouse suite to the sound of her phone vibrating violently across the marble nightstand. 23 missed calls, 9 texts from her PR manager, and one line at the top of her screen that made her blood run cold. All brand partnerships on hold, statement pending. Her face was still streaked with yesterday's makeup. She hadn't slept, couldn't. The night before, she'd watched Lara's proof roll across every screen like a wave swallowing a city. Fashion blogs, legal journals, even meme accounts were sharing the side-by-side breakdowns. There was no denying it anymore. Her empire hadn't been built on talent. It had been built on theft. Meanwhile, inside Coven's once impenetrable headquarters, chaos reigned. Investors had started pulling out, one after another. A notification tone echoed every few minutes in the legal office as termination letters flooded in. "We're bleeding," muttered Coven's CFO, tossing another resignation onto the table. "We've lost 3 major stockholders before lunch." In the main conference room, a hastily assembled crisis team stared at a giant screen showing social sentiment graphs in freefall. "Coven collapse. Cancel Celeste. Return what you stole." The head of PR, Neha, slammed her laptop shut. "We can't spin this. You don't recover from intellectual property theft, especially not when it's this well documented." Another executive added quietly, "There's also the labor inquiry starting in Milan. They're linking this to exploitation. Underpaid ghost designers, the whole system's being cracked open." Celeste entered the room mid-conversation. Her presence once commanded the air, now it barely stirred it. "We need a statement," she snapped. "A full denial, emotional, maybe something about creative overlap." "No," Neha interrupted, standing. "We're not protecting you anymore. You lied to us. You dragged us into this." "You knew what I was doing," Celeste shouted. "We suspected," Neha replied evenly, "but we thought you were smart enough not to get caught." A long silence followed. Then Ava's face appeared on the room's mounted TV, recorded, polished, and devastating. "Meta Holdings has zero tolerance for unethical practices. All contracts with Coven Group and affiliated designers are hereby terminated. Financial penalties will be pursued. We are supporting legal action from the aggrieved party, Lara Meta." The recording ended. Celeste sank into a chair. She was no longer the predator. She was prey abandoned by lawyers, agents, and clients alike. Elsewhere, at a boutique fashion cafe in Bandra, Lara watched the collapse unfold from a quiet corner table. The headlines were brutal. "Fashion's favorite thief finally falls." "How Coven's empire died in 1 week." "Sister Act, the meta power play no one saw coming." She sipped her chai, unreadable. Across from her sat 2 women from a struggling fashion incubator, once skeptical of Lara's story, now eager to collaborate. "We were wrong," one said. "You were erased and you fought back without becoming them." Lara nodded. "I don't want revenge, I want repair for all of us." By week's end, Celeste Vora's brand had been pulled from every major retailer. Rahan Malhotra had deactivated his social media, citing mental health. Tia issued a bland apology through her agent, but the internet wasn't interested. The foundation they stood on had cracked, and everything built on top was crumbling. At Coven HQ's, the final blow came when their lead investor, an international equity firm, publicly declared the company no longer viable. In under 48 hours, the building was emptied, lights off, doors locked. All that remained was a cold plaque on the wall. Koven Group ESD, 2017. A monument to ambition, greed, and erasure. 3 months later, the same industry that once laughed at Lara Meta now waited for her. Not in condescension, in curiosity, in respect. The doors to a sunlit industrial space in Lower Peril opened to a modest but polished launch. No velvet ropes, no overhyped influencers flown in for show. Just a curated invite list of independent designers, overlooked tailors, young interns, and women from marginalized design schools who had once been told, "You don't fit the brand." The new label was called Sutra. Not flashy, not desperate to trend. Just deeply intentional, rooted in something older than runway politics, craft, memory, and reclamation. Lara stepped into the room wearing her signature, clean silhouettes, hand-stitched borders, no logos. Ava stood quietly near the back, arms crossed, watching, not interfering, not directing. Just witnessing. The interns were the first to arrive, nervous, fresh out of forgotten design colleges with more talent than connections. Lara met them at the door herself. "No coffee fetching," she told them gently. "You're here to design. If you make a mistake, make it boldly, but own it." One intern met her, stared at her with wide eyes. "Ma'am, this place, it's the opposite of everywhere else." Lara smiled. "Good, let's keep it that way." Inside the main studio, a massive whiteboard had already been half-covered in ideas. Fusion silhouettes from the Northeast, fabric blend experiments from Rajasthan, and hand embroidery techniques passed down through families who'd never seen a catwalk. Lara moved among them like a conductor, not imposing, but harmonizing. She learned something in her collapse: ego builds empires, but collaboration builds legacies. Later that week, the first preview collection was quietly uploaded to the Sutra website. No press release, just a caption. "Made by those who were told they'd never be enough." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Fashion insiders shared it privately, afraid to admit they'd missed the real talent all along. Grassroots creators amplified it. NGOs reached out to collaborate. Small influencers posted tearful videos wearing the pieces, saying, "For the first time, I feel seen in what I wear." Lara watched it unfold in silence. Not as a revenge story, but as a resurrection. A week later, during a roundtable interview, a skeptical journalist asked her, "You took down giants, are you trying to replace them?" Lara didn't hesitate. "No, I'm trying to build a world where they were never needed in the first place." Behind her, Ava leaned against the doorway, still skeptical of idealism, still queen of power plays, but something in her face had softened. "You'll need money to grow," she murmured privately after the interview. "Real money, investors." "I'll take it," Lara said, "but on contract, no creative control, no fast fashion. They'll sign to me, not the other way around." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You've changed." "No," Lara replied, "I just stopped apologizing for what I was never wrong about." By month's end, Sutra had a waitlist. By season's end, it had partnerships with local artisans cooperatives and a scholarship fund for underrepresented design students. And by year's end, Lara Mehta was no longer referred to as the woman who was humiliated at Coven. She was simply founder, director, architect of a new era. One evening, well after hours, Lara sat alone in her studio, sketching again. Not for a show, not for approval. Just because she could. On the wall hung a framed note, written by Ava in her infamously neat script. "I raised the ground so you could build it better, don't waste it. Eh?" And Lara didn't. The Global Design Equity Summit hadn't seen this much buzz in years. It was a prestigious event hosted in Paris, known for its exclusivity, usually reserved for legacy houses and billion-dollar brands. But this year, something had shifted. A new theme dominated the agenda: ethics in fashion, voices reclaimed. And at the center of that shift was one name: Lara Mehta. Not as a footnote, not as controversy, but as the keynote speaker. Backstage, the hum of cameras and chatter barely touched her. She stood in front of a mirror, her hands still for once. Her outfit wasn't couture, it wasn't designed to scream for attention. It was a white cotton sari with intricate border detailing hand-stitched by her interns, some of whom came from the very slums the industry refused to acknowledge. No label. Just legacy. Ava stepped into the dressing room, clipboard in hand. "They're ready for you," she said, but paused. "Are you ready for them?" Lara smiled softly. "I'm not here to be ready, I'm here to be honest." The hall was packed, rows of fashion editors, cultural critics, tech entrepreneurs, students, and survivors of the old guard. Some who had mocked her, some who had pitied her, and some who had silently rooted for her when it wasn't safe to do so. As Lara walked onto the stage, the applause was cautious at first, then growing, like thunder from far away, finally reaching the ground. She approached the podium, placed her notes down, and looked directly into the crowd. No teleprompter, no spin. Just her voice. 3 years ago, I stood backstage at a fashion show and watched my own designs walk down the runway under someone else's name. I stayed quiet, thinking silence would protect me, that if I endured long enough, I'd earn my place. But silence doesn't protect you, it erases you. I was told I didn't have the right look, the right background, the right kind of polish. I was told explicitly and implicitly that girls like me don't run fashion, we get consumed by it. She paused, locking eyes with someone in the third row, an editor who once rejected her portfolio with a note that said, "Not commercial enough." But I stopped trying to break into rooms that were built to keep people like me out. I built my own. A murmur ran through the room. We built Sutra to prove that craft and ethics are not mutually exclusive, that innovation can come from those you refuse to spotlight, that it is possible to win without stealing. And we are just the beginning. The applause began again, slow, heavy with meaning. Lara stepped back from the podium, then she did something unexpected. She called her interns onto the stage. They stepped out, awkward but proud, young women and men in hand-woven garments, trembling with disbelief. Some waved, some cried, all were seen. Fashion isn't just about what we wear, Lara continued, now standing beside them. It's about who we allow to be visible. The hall gave a standing ovation. Even Ava, stone-faced Ava, allowed a small, rare smile. Backstage, a rush of journalists begged for quotes. Designers wanted meetings. Global schools offered to start fellowships under her name. But Lara walked past them all, not chasing headlines. Outside, she found a quiet bench under a maple tree just beginning to turn golden with autumn. She sat, shoes off, sari slightly creased. A young girl approached her shyly, barely 13, holding a sketchbook. "Are you Lara Maida?" she asked. Lara smiled. "Yes." The girl held out a drawing, raw, colorful, full of spirit. "I want to be like you one day." Lara took the sketch gently, nodding. "Don't be like me, be louder than me, be impossible to ignore." That evening, international headlines read, "From humiliation to honor, Lara Maida ends Fashion Week with a standing ovation." A simple woman, a brutal fall, a beautiful rebuild. The sister who fired a department and started a revolution. And so the story ended not with revenge, not with dominance, but with a woman once erased, etched permanently into history. Not because she shouted, but because she stood her ground long enough for the world to finally listen.